there! Today I'm going to show you how to remove your project from your loom once you are finished weaving. The first thing we are going to do is cut your shuttle off. So I want to make sure I'm leaving a nice long tail like that. I'm going to turn my loom around a little bit. I want to release the tension off the top and the bottom. We no longer need it to be under tension. And I'm going to come around to this side where all of the strands are wrapped around the apron bar. And I'm going to start tying the knots from the opposite end from where my tail is. So I'm going to come over here and see I'm cutting them off of the apron bar like that. But I'm only going to cut a few at a time. I am not going to cut all the way across. If you release them all, there's a chance that this is going to start to unravel because it isn't under tension any longer. So I just tie the knots as I go. Next I'm going to come over here and I'm going to take 4 strands. I put my finger underneath to pull them up to make sure I've got 4 that are in consecutive order. I'm going to cross it over like that so that the cross is right down at the base of your weaving there. Pull the end through and slide that knot down nice and tight so it secures that last row of your weaving in place. Now the reason I'm choosing 4 for my tassels here are that it just tends to look nice. You don't have too big of a gap between, and it'll just give you a nice row of knots. If you choose 6 or a bigger number like that, you tend to have a little bit more of a pull between your knots. I'm just going to cut a few more here. Come back down. And again, see how if I put my hand underneath, I can make sure that I'm not missing any of them. It makes you pretty angry if you leave one of them out. Cross it over and push it down nice and tight. Do the next 4. It's a little bit fiddly. Just be patient with it. And again, I put my finger underneath to make sure that I've got the ones that I need to have. I cross it over. That crossover is right at the base. Pull it through and you get a nice row of even knots. And you just work your way all the way across here. 4. Turn it. You can move the loom to whatever position is easier on your back. I'm kind of at a bit of an awkward angle just so that you can get a good look at it for the video. Normally I would turn this around so that it's right against me. Cross it over, pull it through, tighten it down, and reach underneath again. I'm always making sure I don't lose one. You end up swearing a lot if you find one little warp string at the end you left out. There, I'm going to come and I'm going to cut a few more strands. Now this one has a lot of knots from when I did the warping because I was using up bits of sock yarn for this scarf, so I had to start and stop a lot of different strands, so I have many knots up on that apron bar. And pull it through, cross it over and tighten it down. Take 4, cross it over, pull it through, down, cut a few more, and you get better at doing those knots the more you practice your weaving. One option too, if you don't wish to have knots on something, is to learn the hem stitch, and I will do a video in the future of the hem stitch, and that will allow you just to simply cut your project off when you're complete. But for now, this scarf is going to have tassels. Tighten it down, reaching underneath each time so that I don't lose any of my strands. Do 4, cross over and down. Need a good pair of scissors for this. think I do a lot of beginner classes here at my little shop. And I find it usually takes a little bit for people to get the hang of getting the knots low. And the best advice for that I can offer is make sure that when you cross it over, that crossover is right down low. And that way, see, your knot comes off and it is right down at the base. And if you have to undo the odd one and retie it, it's not a big deal. That nice and tight there. And a few more snips. And you can see here, see how that is starting to unravel a little bit. Just want to kind of guide it back down, and as you tie the knots, you're going to secure it. So you can see if you take it right off the loom all at once, that could easily happen to your entire edge, and you're going to have a big, difficult situation on your hands to get everything back into place. And cross over, and cinch it down, almost done. Cross over, pull it through, and tighten it down. And I'll cut the last ones. So now that I'm cutting the last ones off, I want to make sure that you're careful here because there's no more tension on it at all. Make sure we're tightening that in. Now in this case, my warp and weft are similar yarns. So for this case, I'm actually going to tie that last strand in with my tails here, with my tassels. So I'm going to take those and just tie that in carefully. Pull that last one right through, because you won't notice it in there. Great. So now I'm going to turn the loom around. This is my favorite part in the class, and all the students reveal what they're working on. So I flip this over and make sure the tension is off, and I'm going to unravel and see my project. So I've used a whole variety of sock yarns, so it turned out pretty. There we go. Unfurl the whole thing. It's a good long one. Excellent. I'm just going to flip this over. I'll deal with all those little tails later on. And you can see here that I have used the inside of a paper towel roll. When I started weaving, I popped that over the knots. And what that does is it allows me, as I start rolling the project down, to have a smoother roll. So you find sometimes with the finer yarns, like the sock yarn, that there'll be little pulls, and you'll notice as it goes over the knot here in the middle especially, that you'll end up with a pull in your weaving. Putting something like this paper towel roll over top of it will help for that to not happen. So I'm going to finish unrolling it and I'm going to pop that off. And flip that over. And I'm going to come to this end, and I remember from the warping we had tied these off, and these ones happen to be in bunches of 8. So I'm going to untie one little bunch at a time. I'm going to tie a knot of 4. Same thing again. We're just doing that wrap around, cross over right at the base, and pull it through. Like that. And you just work your way along. Again, it's a little fiddly. This is fairly small yarn too. And I'm always putting my hand underneath there to make sure that I'm not leaving any of the strands behind. The little kink there from the knots in the yarn will come out when you do the wet finish on the scarf. Pull that out. Again, just working my way along. Kind of monotonous. But it's satisfying once it's off the loom. I'm going to do a wet finish on it. I may show that in another video. For a wet finish, all you're going to do is take your finished project, wet it under warm water, and then lay it out really nice and flat. I usually put it on a towel, and that allows the natural fibers in your project to bloom a little bit, and it locks in your weave. So you can do that. I do that with just about anything unless it's acrylic. I don't think acrylic changes very much once it's been wet, so I do it with any natural fiber. I usually cut those little ends off here where I changed yarns. I cut those off after the wet finish so that way if there is any movement of them or anything as the yarn expands in there, I have enough yarn there that the ends won't stick out. So I wait and do that after. Around, tighten her up. Try not to catch all those little ends in there. A few more knots to go and it's off the loom. It's always exciting to get the project finished. And again, I'm going to weave in, tie in that last strand. That was the strand we started with when we started the project. I'm going to tie it into my tassels as well because the color blends in well and it's the same weight of yarn. I'm just going to tie that right in. Open it out. And there we have the finished project. There, so now a wet finish and a little bit of a trim. And it's off the loom. And I would like to say thank you very much to everybody who's been watching my videos. I'm really enjoying hearing the feedback from all of you, and if you have any requests for more videos, I'd love to hear from you. And if you're ever out in Nova Scotia, come and visit me at my little shop, the Violet Unicorn in Fisherman's Cove, Nova Scotia, Canada. Thank you.